Welcome to Take 10. I'm starting a brand new series of things today, and I'm entitling it, Acting Without Hesitation. That's right, you heard it. Acting without hesitation. Maybe you say to me, well, you're supposed to have the wisdom and a multitude of counsel, and don't move fast, and move slow, and take your time, and work it out. Let me tell you, God prepares you through life circumstances to be ready to take what is before you in an instant fashion. How many times have you gone to buy something, thought maybe you'd think about it, went back, and it was gone? I had a man one time tell me about the property next to him. He said, I'm going to buy it for the church. I think I will buy it. Every time I'd see him, I'd say, how about that property there? Oh, I'm working on it. Oh, I'm working on it. The truth is it was sold and a convenience store was gone right in there. Now he has to put up with a convenience store right next door to his church. I mean, within 50 yards. What was the problem? Well, he didn't have enough. Well, he didn't know anybody. Well, he didn't have the money. He couldn't get a loan. He wasn't in a position. These are not things you can afford to do. Say, well, how much is it worth next to me? I think the man wanted too much money for the property next door. Listen, my dad gave me some very strong advice. The property next door to you is whatever they want for it and whatever you can negotiate to get it without losing it. Because it's far more worth to you than it is to the person that's coming in. And then when you find out what they actually sold the land for, you'll be sick that you didn't do it when you had the opportunity. Now, I'm not just talking about property. I'm talking about hiring people, making moves, moving into office spaces, doing this, doing that, doing the other, going here, going there. And you have to act without hesitation so many times. So that's why you need to rely on your history coming up to now to bring you to the place to where you can make a decision quickly. I'm not talking about snap decisions. I'm talking about this computer God's given you called the mind that tells you where it was. You know, it's been my fortunate circumstance to be with good businessmen and bad businessmen. I have ran with all of them. I have been in all kinds of meetings. I have listened. I have watched. I have thought what was the newest thing in town, and the greatest businessman I'd ever seen become the worst businessman I'd ever seen. You say, why is it fortunate? Because when you are able to see this and that, I'm not talking about people who failed. I'm talking about just good and bad business, how it works. And if you walk away and not say things in a manner that gives you what we call a judgment, where you make a judgment in your spirit that says, I'll never do that. I'll never go there. I'll never be a part of that. That limits you. That causes you that when hesitation comes, that you don't act. You don't move. You don't make a decision. You don't go to a next miniature step that will keep those things alive that God has meant for you without closing the door until either you are ready to close the door or God closes the door on you. Now, sometimes when the door is closed, it is not closed. Sometimes when they tell you that you're not going to get this or you're not going to have this, it's only for your good, and a few weeks down the road, you may find yourself right back in the driver's seat. Not time for depression. It's not time to go into a funk. It's not time to take yourself into a project. It's time to know when to act without hesitation. Nobody's talking about this. Nobody wants to talk about this. But let's talk about you and God. A whole series. I don't know how long it's going to take me to get through this. It may take me 6 or 8 sessions to get through this on just 10 minutes a day, where you pull your car over, or you grab a cup of coffee, sit down and put the Bluetooth in your ears, or you play it to a group of friends. I'm saying it's time for you to discover who you are and what you need to do. Here's the statement that you have to get a hold of. It is true that God will give you what and who you need to do the job He has given you. I had a prophecy early in my ministry, and it wasn't from man. I felt God speak this into my spirit. I know, some of you think I'm crazy. Go ahead. Crazy works. But that thing worked in my spirit, and here's what I felt like was said to me. Old men will show you the way to go. So from that day forward, I never went past an old man that I didn't talk to. In fact, just in a few days, I met a man. I met a man who owned the Biddle advertising firm, sold out to the major conglomerates in New York City some 35 years ago, and he received millions. In those days, millions were millions. He instantly went on a party. He began to play golf all over the world. His son, very avid golfer, they played. They played everybody, anybody, anywhere, anytime, and the booze flowed. The party time was on. But after a while, the money started going down. The jet planes full of people started going down. This was in the days when it was expensive. It's expensive now, but the money is in retrospect. If they'd take over a whole Delta Airlines jet, go play golf. Everybody riding on Mr. Biddle. When I met him, he was driving an old Lincoln Continental, and he was drunk about 3/4 of the time. He would come and park his Lincoln right where I was building a property, a church, and a warehouse center, and he would sit there and watch. When I first went up to him, I didn't just throw him out with everybody else. I introduced myself. You never know who you're talking about. And it is true that God will give you what and who you need to do the job He has given you. Mr. Biddle became my friend. Mr. Biddle liked me because I was kind to his son and his son's family. His son had married a woman who had many children, and it was a welfare experience. The son was a hard worker, but he just wasn't ever going to be a manager. I worked with him. I loved him. Mike was a great friend, and is to this day a great friend of mine. And I honored him greatly. I had him with me a lot because he just was one of those guys who would do anything, anytime you asked, with a smile on his face. His daddy appreciated that. Then he began to give me advice. Now you're going to say, you listen to a drunk man in an old beat-up Lincoln? Hey, he wasn't always drunk. He owned the Biddle Advertising Company. I followed him up. He sold out to the Time magazine fortune, and he sold out to some of the greatest people on Wall Street. He wasn't a dummy. He just let his life go into a place to where everything became hesitation. He said, I said to him one day, I said, Mr. Biddle, do you ever know and remember a time after you received your fortune that you thought, I ought to stop this partying? I ought to just quit? He said, many times the thought came to me, stop. But he said, I was having too good a time to just act on it. Now let me ask you this question. Have you missed opportunities because you haven't acted without hesitation? Many of you have talked to me about forming another 501c3 and going a different direction than church or ministry or what you've done, and some of you have done that. But others have let things go past them because they have to work it all. Well, everything has an line. Let me tell you, God works on steps. God works one step at a time. And I'm going to bring you through this series of Take 10 sessions. I'm going to take you into a place to where you biblically know when to act without hesitation. You don't want to miss the next section. I'm going to tell you about another man I met 25, 27 years ago who was a man of acting without hesitation. No, he wasn't drunk. No, he wasn't a loser on his fortune. No, he wasn't a man who had a reservoir of wisdom like Mr. Biddle, but just couldn't get the end result together and live out a great life. This was a man that when he passed on, his family is so well known. Well, I'll just wait and tell you about it. He was a great supporter and friend, and we're going to talk about that on the next Take 10. God bless you. Hey, look, remember, you can go back through your emails or you can go back to YouTube and you can get these things. And those of you that are on the special list, you have gotten Ministry Toolbox. And you want to save those because they're not published anywhere else. And you'll want to know exactly how to operate your 501c3. And for those of you that have been thinking about it, it's time now to not wait. Act without hesitation. And I'm sure that I'm coming as a voice in the wilderness to you today. And there's some things you need to do right now that today you needed an answer. Take the step you can. It's not the end result. And listen, I'm the master of serendipity. What is serendipity? Looking for one thing and finding another. So many times in my life, I have acted without hesitation because I had the knowledge, I had the thoughts, and I trusted God. Those steps I took led me to something I wasn't even looking for that became the greatest things in my life. There's some great things happening in the ICCI. You want to stay hooked to Ministry Launch, and you don't want to miss one of these Take 10s over the next 6 months. It is rolling out in a brand new way, and you can't afford to hang back. Act without hesitation. God bless you.